Hello, and welcome to Monday Mug Mentions, week number 13. This week, we're talking about a few things some games with building mechanisms, Kind Fortress game blog, and the marketing behind the new McDonald's Happy Meal. So, we'll get into all of that this week. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing wonderful. I hope you're having a wonderful Monday. You might notice you can see me a little bit better this week. We've upgraded our camera, we've got a new light. We are a little bit higher fidelity this week, I guess you'd say. So, hello and welcome. You can see a bit more of my office. You can see my fan. It's New England. It's still springtime. No AC. We're still at a fan. This is all very new to me, even a few years in. In Texas, I'm sure everyone has their ACs on right now. So let's do this. Hello, Clinton, Zach. Zach, good to see you. Let's see here. Richard, Courtney, my lovely wife. Hello, good to see you. Let's see here. Jennifer, Richard, Yuri, Steve-O, Brad, Damien. Hello to all of you. Happy Monday. How are you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic week. Yes, I have one fan. I have one fan. You're right about that, Brad. That's correct. So, yes, we've upgraded the camera just a little bit. I've cut my thumb doing miniatures work, so you'll have to let that be. I have a Band-Aid. And we've got a new light. So hopefully you can see me better. I'll adjust settings as they go. Yeah, I have a new camera, and I hope that you all enjoy it. Yeah, you can see more things, including whatever shirt I'm wearing. You can actually see now, probably. So, coming down from the geek way highs, says Clinton. I know that feeling. Post convention, you always have those sort of geek way or packs or whatever it is. You always have a just really, really full, sort of heart going on and a lot of ideas, a bunch of mentions. So, since Zach's here, I want to say thank you very much. I'm about to taste my first taste of this delicious coffee. This is coffee contribution by Zach Connolly of Royal Inn Games. Now, Zach makes a fun little game that I like to play called Deathbot Derby. Stephanie says Geekway is still going in my heart. That's awesome, Stephanie. I'm really glad. Yeah, usually for about a week after any convention, I feel like the convention's still sort of running for me internally, for sure. I know that feeling. That's amazing feeling to have. I really enjoy it. So thank you again, Zach. Now, Zach makes a game called Deathbot Derby that I really enjoy. And Zach sent me some coffee called Death Wish Coffee. So he's very on brand. He sent me their whole bean version. I ground some up this afternoon. That is a very strong cup of coffee. It is good. It is tasty, but it is very strong. You can definitely taste why they say it's the strongest cup of coffee on earth is what they, or in the world, I believe is what they claim, and it's really, really good. I do want to show you something cool. It comes in this really, really nice box. I mean, look at that box. It's got foil or UV stamp on the side. Not foil, sorry, UV stamp on the side. This very nice, Death Wish coffee branding. That is very, very cool. I had never researched them much. I did find it funny that in 2016, I believe, they had a recall for one of their particular types of coffee because it caused potential botulism, which kills people. So it was literally Death Wish coffee, but it looks like all that's been cleared up. So thank you. This is one Death Wish I enjoy getting in the mail. Thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate that. Another thing is they send you a sticker. That's a very bright idea. Anytime you can send somebody something that costs you very little that will allow them to brand something up, that's great. And I actually have a sticker box. I keep all my stickers together. I have a project that I'm working on that deals with stickers. So I'm going to put that one with another sticker I was recently given from a guy named Blaze who makes stickers. And it's a piece of pink poop. And then I'll put these in my sticker box very soon. Thank you again, Zach. This is really, really, really nice. Proof to you all that Zach sent me a nice little gift. It says, a gift for you from Zach. This new lighting setup is going to make it hard to read anything on paper. I just realized that light is really bright. I've got all the adjusted settings, so I'll have to do something to make sure we can read paper. But yeah, this is such an incredibly well-crafted box for just some coffee. It's a really, really well done. Branding is good stuff. Where's your MMM sticker? I don't have an MMM mug yet. I think I need to get that handled pretty soon, don't I? So Again, thank you so much, Zach. This is delicious. I really appreciate it. That was so kind of you. If you guys have not played it, check out Deathbot Derby and check out Royal End Games. And Zach's got some new stuff coming up, if I remember. So I did get to play one of his prototypes at Unpub 8, and it was a very fun stacking game that I still think needs no take that whatsoever. You can take all of it out. I know that you still have it in, Zach, but you can take it out. You can take it out. But anyway, it is delicious coffee. I definitely suggest trying out some of the Death Wish stuff. It's really, really good. So, hello, Corey and Steven. Thank you for joining us. Rob, good to see you. All right, so let's move on. Let's get into the meat of the potatoes here. What? There's no meat in potatoes. The middle part. All right, and let's talk about the game or mechanism that I'm sort of interesting. Oh, well, no problem. Thank you, Stephanie. I will post it later, and thank you for joining for a little bit. Good to see you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Zach says we're ditching the take that. Win. I am so happy about that, man. I wanted you to ditch the take that. I wanted to get rid of it. Even Gil Hova wanted that, but Gil Hova doesn't want any take that in games. So Gil Hova and I played Zach's game together, and we really enjoyed it, but we both agreed it needed no take that whatsoever. And it's a really fun game that builds on things and Tetricity, or I know we can't use the word Tetris in anything, but it's it's a really fun little game. I like it. I think it's a good idea. I really would like to see more of it. So let's get into the mechanism I want to talk about this week. And that's stacking things on top of things and building something, right? I love doing that, and I've been thinking more about that, why that's so fun. And what I want to talk about on the video game side, or sorry, the board game side, is Animal Upon Animal, Haba's Animal Upon Animal. It's actually right up there on my shelf. It's one of the coolest games that I think I've really played with my kiddo that we can probably play again. Like, we need to bust it out again. But you just roll a die, and then you put a certain animal on top or next to your stack of animals, and they just stack up sort of in a 2D wall. And as you do that, it really is a fairly simple stacking game, but there's some strategy involved, right? So, like, which side you place a crocodile on and where its nose touches and things like that might give you a better placement for your next animal. The monkey that you're going to put on top of that, or whatever the case may be, the little toucan. And each piece is a fun little piece that stacks, and it's fun. That's all there is to it. Is it's fun. And again, this game's been out since 2005. My understanding from friends at Haba is that it still sells quite well. It should. It's a great dexterity game for kids to learn. And we have to remember, as like high strategy game players who generally like things that are sort of longer term, like, you've got to start to learn those mechanisms somewhere. I'm going to jump to some comments real fast. Mark Burke, thank you for joining us. Clinton says, I just played Wonky. And then Steven says, Animal Upon Animal is great. I totally agree. Corey says, Haba's second annual design contest just opened. $5 entry for them to send you a designer kit, and you have to use 3 pieces out of it. Only 200 kits available. Corey, if you wouldn't mind sending me a link for that, I'd be interested in that, actually. That's a very interesting thing. I'm not sure if they would let a team do it, but Andrew and I definitely have some kids stuff that we might be interested in doing that way. So both Animal Upon Animal and the 2-player version, the dual, are excellent, Rob says. I really, really enjoy the idea of stacking things on others, and it works well for teaching kids the idea of dexterity plus a little strategy. The idea of the way the dice roll and that each animal has a different sort of rule set built around it is really clever. I think that's a really good way to sort of introduce those mechanisms to children without being, like, overbearing. Let's see here. Clinton says it was pretty fun. He played it at 2 a.m. I assume you're talking about Wonky there. I'd like to try that one out soon. Damien says it's not Tetris, it's spatial relations concept and theory. Okay, and let's see here. Yeah, Clinton says Drop It is very Tetris-like as well. I talked about Drop It recently, and I agree there. I think I talked about Drop It alongside Tetris on episode 6 or 7 or something like that. So, yeah, I definitely understand that. Oh, Jeff Johnson posted it. Excellent. I love Jeff. He's a great guy. Very, very fun games. Moonquake Escape's a lot of fun and all that sort of stuff. So let's move on to the digital game that sort of got me thinking about this, because Animal Upon Animal, again, stacking, very fun. I think there's a lot of things you can do. I've done a lot of different games like this, but I think Animal Upon Animal is a really, really good entry point for kiddos. And I love the way that it just sort of plays quickly. You roll the dice, you stack a piece, you pass it to the next person. So I look forward to playing this one again with my kiddos. So Project High Rise by Cassetto Games is essentially a re-implementation of Sim Tower, which was one of my favorite games to play when I was younger. Actually, I think Sim Tower, the original one, was out in the early aughts or even maybe the late '90s, and I played a ton of Sim Tower. I love the idea of managing a tower and being able to do all these different tasks and run a building, and it was just an interesting game to me. I've always enjoyed all of the sim type things, but the tower building one for some reason really struck me as a fun version. There was another game that I played on the iPad for a while that was sort of an app version that was much similar, but it was more casino driven. You were trying to build a casino, and it was a fun game, but it sort of lost interest for me. And then I saw Project High Rise on Steam, and had a friend who actually sent me a code for it, and we tried it out together, and we played some different things, and it does go a little slower than I'd like, but you can speed that up, of course, with a different speed throughout the game. There are only two speeds. Other than that, however, you are just building up and up and up and trying to get more revenue and trying to get more tenants, and you can do offices or apartments or a mixture of both, or you can also go into the hotel industry. So really it's a very open world version of what you would normally assume would be a linear type game where you just build a tower and build it up. You can kind of go any which way you want. So it's a very interesting game to me. I found that it scratches an itch that Sim Tower did not, in being able to do multiple things at once, and you have influence and buzz that you create by putting the restaurants and shops in certain areas are the right positions. And I think that's a really fun way to think about strategy. I've thought for a long time a board game about doing something like that would be fun, where you're building a tower. And I know that there have been some where you're actually building towers, around maps and stuff, but I think building just one big static tower that everybody's sort of profiting off of different things, or even a Euro where you're doing different tower building, or renovations on a big building or something like that, might be a really fun concept to explore that I'm not sure has been done. I know with Lisboa you're rebuilding Lisbon, but the cognitive overhead in that game is so high that I'm not sure it scratches the itch that I'm looking for in terms of rebuilding a city, or rebuilding per se some sort of tower or structure, or even just building one from the foundation up. I think that would be a fun premise. So let's see. Zach says, have you tried Tumple? I have not. I really have not yet. That's very one. That's one I would like to look into. I'm not even aware of it. Hello, Mom. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. John and David, good for y'all. Good of y'all to join. Thank you, and happy Monday. So yeah, Project High Rise, interesting. I do like the idea of building towers. I've always liked the idea of sim games where you're managing stuff. So I really think that's a clever game, done in a nice way that's got a lot of replayability. You can build different towers and things like that. Very similar to the idea of just stacking one thing on top of another, though. I mean, animal upon animal is very fun, and just stacking. And that's something that humans enjoy, is stacking things up. Like we for whatever reason, we like building up things, walls, buildings, whatever the case may be. Humans enjoy stacking things on top of each other and making things fit nicely, one within the other. That's a very human trait. We really like that. So lean into that when you're designing games, right? Like the fact that humans enjoy building something that goes higher and higher. Lean into it. And Zach, as a matter of fact, who sent the coffee this week, the design of his I Played at Unpub is just that. You are stacking things up higher and higher, and that was where the fun was. So I think that's pretty common to think about, like, oh, well, then it's just Jenga-esque, or it's just, and Jenga's not that. You actually start with a built tower and disassemble it. It's the reverse of that. But, people tend to associate those sort of games that way. I think dexterity games get a bad rap sometimes when they're labeled that way. But think of building things up, maybe on a board in a linear way, not the dexterity aspect as well. Because I think, again, this sort of tower building thing is fun. People tend to enjoy it. So Corey says, I'm working on a tower skyscraper building game based off of the Rivet Gangs of New York, building Empire State. Everyone is building the same tower but scoring joints. That's interesting. I like that. I think that kind of very similar to what I'm talking about. So very cool, very cool. So let's move on to the media that I want to talk about this week, and that is Isaac Shalev and his blog with or at Kind Fortress. It's just kindfortress.com. Isaac talks about some pretty amazing stuff, but really the one reoccurring segment I wanted to mention that's been very useful to me in our designs, and even in looking at other designers' work, and how we approach it is the design pattern series. Everything from the patterns of scoring to the patterns of the ways that people interact with each other, the patterns of certain things like how cards interact or mechanisms interact with one another, and it's incredibly helpful. His recent one on triangular scoring helped me realize why I felt some games that we were looking at had very similar scoring situations, and it's because it's a very, very commonly used scoring mechanism. It's inherent for us to do that. And so as soon as I realized by reading that that's why those all seem the same, because they're all using that triangular scoring mechanism. That's why they feel similar. That's why I think that maybe we alter the scoring mechanism, or we figure out something different, or maybe we just accept that these have similar scoring mechanisms. I think there's something to being able to lean on a blog like Isaac's and go, oh wow, I didn't think of it that way, and it matters in real time. And in my case, it matters in real time. Almost everything I read there, I can equate to something that we've either worked on, looked at, or are currently sort of fooling with. So I really, really appreciate the level of depth that Isaac goes into on each of his articles. He was recently a guest on Ludology, which was the first podcast I ever talked about on this show. So I think that essentially it's like again, this community is big, but not that big. So you tend to have some connections with others. And when I heard his discussion about patterns on that podcast, I'd already read the pattern. I'd read quite a few of the design patterns blog posts, but hearing him talk about it was a nice change, I guess you should say. Like I usually just read, and I've only met Isaac a couple times. We had neighboring booths at Connecticut Festival of Any Games one point, and we got to chat there. And he's very pleasant, very, very nice guy. I like Isaac. His insights are sound. He's very, very smart. So I essentially really, really like reading his blog, but I think even if you don't play games, you can read some neat things there, or if you don't make games, you can read some neat things there about why you enjoy certain patterns more than others, and why maybe you don't enjoy certain kinds of games. If there's a certain pattern that becomes repetitive and you see it, oh well, I don't like those mix of mechanisms. If you know that, you can save yourself some time by realizing that maybe that's not something you want to play. I've been learning that from other publishers that we work with, or even talk to. Gil Hova's one who I met, and he does not like games with Take That. He doesn't really like games with large global states. If you don't like that type of game, don't waste your time maybe playing it, or that's a very, very interesting thing. For me, I tend to play everything. I like to try everything, but there are some types of games I've noticed I don't like. I don't want to get into exactly what those are. Hello, Stephen, Kevin, Daniel. How are y'all? Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining me for a cup of coffee. I really appreciate it. I hope y'all are having a wonderful start to your week. So anyway, the overall message of this is go look at Isaac's blog, especially if you're in the game design industry or if you are interested in making games. It's going to save you a lot of time on the things that you normally probably would just need to sort of figure out through intuition or making lots of mistakes. He's going to show you the patterns that people do and don't like. There's going to be patterns that work together and don't. And again, none of these things are, I think, presented in a way where it's like this one-of rule, that this is how you're going to make games and that's it. Any rule you can, any rule in game design you can break. They're made to be broken, but you have to break it really well in a way that people enjoy, and then you can sort of recreate the rule, right? So a lot of people say that player elimination's bad. It is. I don't enjoy it. I think it's bad for a lot of reasons. However, I think there are ways you could break the mold with player elimination that maybe make it one of the most compelling ways to play games. I think there's a whole lot of things you can do with all sorts of different mechanisms that people say are taboo. Spinners is one that I'm getting into very, very soon. I've been talking to a whole lot of people about it, and it's ridiculous that people think that if you have a spinner in a game that it's not thought of as a real high strategy game. We're going to change that as soon as we possibly can. So. And Zach says, hey, Dan, we were talking stacking, your favorite. And Dan says, I hate stacking. Rob says, I stack your milkshake. This is very, 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 very strange banter going on here. But Dan Peterson is from Mayday Games. And he and I go out very similar places. We've seen each other very often looking to sign games from developer or from designer or development teams. Dan says, I rejected a trick-taking game and a card tactics game this morning. Yes, you must keep the rules, then break them. Yeah, I totally agree, Dan. That's I'm sorry to hear that you rejected them, but I hope that they weren't. Maybe they need some work, or maybe they just don't fit your lineup. And that's something that designers also have to deal with, is knowing that sometimes what you have is not what a publisher is looking for. That's very, very often the case. So Zach says hashtag save the spinner. I agree. Spinner Builder is where I want to go, where you can actually build your pieces of the pie chart and build a better spinner. I think it's, there's a lot of different ways you can do things, though, that are outside of the rule set that we all say is like the only way to do things. For many, many people, there are die-hard rules that they will not break, and that's fine. But if you can find that one rule that somebody says absolutely don't do, and you make the best version of a game that operates outside of the rule, and it's compelling, and it's fun, and people enjoy what you're doing, then the rule doesn't exist. That's the whole point of what we're doing, is to find new ways to compel people to have fun. So, I mean, if you find a way to break a rule and do it in a compelling way, you've been successful at breaking that trope. It's hard to do. I wouldn't suggest it for your first design, but I would suggest that we stop making the same mechanism mixes with different coats of paint. I think that we are really, really, there's so many publishers out there right now that we certainly need to find things that are different, that do something different than what we've already seen. I love Euro games. I've seen some really fantastic Euro games in the last few years, but they all have just different coats of paint and some very similar engines. There's some that do some different things, but again, we're talking about mostly engine building to a victory point scoring sort of culmination. And I love that, but that's for me. I think that we can create better and more compelling experiences by mixing in different, mechanisms that people maybe frown upon and doing it in a clever way. That's one of the things I think about when we're doing design stuff, is how can we stick something in here that doesn't belong and make it work and fun. And a lot of times it ends up coming out, but it's worth trying, that's for sure. So, and now we're going to talk about the marketing, which is a little disgusting, but we've got to talk about it. So why not in week 13, which is, doesn't 13 have some sort of, don't hotels skip the 13th floor, which means if you're on the 14th floor that you're in the 13th floor. It's anyway, numbers like that. Or I'm not super superstitious, but there are 13 viewers here on 13 week right now, live. So let's talk about McDonald's Hasbro Gaming Happy Meal initiative. I'm not gonna lie. There was a time in my mid-20s where my wife and I both said we will never eat that garbage again, ever. It's not happening. So, real fast. Let's see here. Rob says Spin Forge. Exactly. Precisely. Clinton says, I love your spinner build concept. It's awesome. Thank you. If we don't break the mold, we keep getting the same game, says Zach, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I see good average nonstop, according to Dan Peterson. I agree with that. I see good average games on a regular basis, and that's just not what we want. Right now, I need something, that's just way outside of what most people see. It is totally not the same run-of-the-mill. When you look at the table, you go, what the hell is that? That's what I'm looking for. We've signed a few of those recently. We've also signed a couple that are a little more run-of-the-mill, because we do need to be able to teach our kids how to play and have some things that are, engaging for families that are not looking for something that's way out there. But we are going way out there with a few of our new designs, in my personal opinion. Anyway, all right, so let's see here. Clinton says, I was talking with Jimmy Hudson about your concept because he's mentioned his aversion to spinners. I'll make Jimmy into a spinner fan. Okay, Clinton? So, Rob says, I got hungry hippos. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Carol Ann, Mom, says, I love the mini board games at McDonald's. Best toy since mini Beanie Babies. Well, I'm glad you like them, Mom. So, McDonald's is now giving small versions of Hasbro board games out in their Happy Meals. This is my son's from yesterday. It's a neat initiative. Okay, so there was a time in my 20s or late 20s where my wife and I had both sworn this kind of food off. We would never eat there again. And then we had children. And your children not only both will eat a Happy Meal with McNuggets, which is just getting them to eat can honestly be a chore sometimes, but also it's quick and something you got to do sometimes. So we got a Happy Meal, and lo and behold, I see Hasbro Gaming has their logo on the deal, and I go, whoa, yeah, no, this was my Happy Meal. No, I had a Big Mac. I had a Big Mac and a lemonade and some French fries. It was disgustingly tasty. Yeah, I mean, they sell hamburgers. It's not health food, that's for sure. But what is interesting to me about this is that they have about 7 different games that are all, your run-of-the-mill family game type thing. And the goal here is not to get anybody playing games for the most part. Maybe 1 or 2, but I mean, so we've gotten the Pie Face one. You click a couple times, and then we also got one other one, and it was the Connect 4. And the Connect 4 has paper pieces. I mean, it's not, there's no longevity to these games. It's just to get the name out there. It's just to get you thinking about board games. And then when you're at Target or Walmart or whatever store you're at with your child, and they see, oh, hey, look, Mousetrap. They just put out a new version of Mousetrap, and that's that one that I bought, and I had in my little Happy Meal. Can I get it, Mom? And now you're there, and you're thinking, of course, well, I love board games. Why wouldn't I buy my child a fun board game from even my youth that I would have enjoyed to play? So you buy Mousetrap. I mean, this is all, of course, a marketing push. It is a way to gain more money for Hasbro and more traction for Hasbro to sell more games. However, there is a sort of secondary awesome effect for the rest of us in the industry, and that's that we're reaching out right now to kids at the Happy Meal level about board games. So as much as I don't really, want to push the agendas of these 2 major corporations by any means, I do want to push the agenda of board games, and I do appreciate that on a national level, people are now talking about board games, and I'm seeing posts about, other people's Happy Meals and what game they got in it and stuff on Facebook. That's great. That's building our hobby. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's part of the reason that we're seeing billions of dollars of growth over spans of a few years in the tabletop industry. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of people, but it's nothing compared to the video game industry. I mean, our room for growth is limitless. So it is very, very cool that companies this large are paying attention to board games. I've said this about Arby's in a previous episode. Arby's was marketing directly to board gamers, putting meeples in their different things. I mean, it's becoming far more mainstream to be a board game player and a board game fan. So we should be able to piggyback on that and, really, really pay attention to that as small publishers. You should, understand that there's a national audience. So I've heard James Hudson say this. I've heard a lot of other people say this. There's a national audience. Act professional from the get-go. From day one, start doing the best you can to present the most professional product you can all the time. Our very, very first game was a very, very, very rough foray into board game publishing. It was a card game called Shipload of Gold. From there we did very well with Stir Fry 18. We were very lucky to rebound from what would have been a very, very bad first game launch. So think about that. Like for your first, if you're a small publisher and you're getting ready to get started in this, think about the fact that it is a national scale. There are people all over the world who are now looking at board games. There are major corporations talking about it. It's in the mainstream. So our marketing potential is very, very large, but you really do need to do your best to look professional up front. Okay, so Daniel, talking about games and signing them, says, I can't compete with good average. I have to find and publish exceptional games to compete. I 100% agree. I don't think there's any real major benefit in going with like marginal games unless you're looking for a product to fill a particular niche. So Brad Taylor says, your son, sure, we know, is your Happy Meal. Yeah, I had a Big Mac for sure. Jennifer says, what do you think you can do as a publisher to encourage designers to focus designs on what publishers are looking for specifically? No problem with me talking McDonald's. These are exactly the kind of questions I want to have on the show. So as a publisher, to encourage designers to focus on designs or focus designs on what publishers are looking for specifically. So I think you can be very clear about what you're looking for. For us, I say family games. I know that can be fairly broad, but it does keep a certain wall out around things with, pornography or, heavy language, anything with, sort of source content that's going to be offensive. That's all sort of, when I say family, that kind of is out the door. From there, we're pretty big on, I like to tell people, and I have this on the websites where we're listed, that we want highly thematic games where the theme is sort of baked into the mechanisms. So, I don't necessarily need you to give me the artwork and everything like that, but I definitely want something very, very specific in terms of, this mechanism works with this theme because X, it should make sense. I like when the theme makes sense with the mechanisms. You go, we're doing this mechanism, and that makes sense compared to, sword fighting. In sword fighting, I do this quick thing where we go tat, 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 and I'm doing tat, tat, tat on the game. So, you want to make your game fit whatever you're doing. So I think that's a big part of what we try to do. And then from there, ask. I think that designers should ask publishers, what is it that you're looking for currently? What can I do to tailor my designs more towards you? I'd love to get my game signed with you. I think a lot of times we have this like barrier or wall between publishers and designers that doesn't need to exist. Like, ask up front. Ask before you start designing games. What are the things you're looking for? I'm getting ready to start designing my, prospectus of things to take to Gen Con 2019. Why don't you do me a favor and let me know what you're looking for? Reach out to publishers. An email is very, very, every email I get, I answer. So it's not without question. I get emails asking all sorts of questions, some much sillier than what kind of games is Yanaguana Games looking for right now. So I definitely think you should look for things that are outside of just going, well, I think they do this, so I'm just going to send them this. Like, ask them, what do you want? What are you looking for right now? What can I do to get my game signed with you if that's my goal? I think that's a good question to ask any publisher, all the way up to Hasbro. Hasbro, I recently sat on in front row of a panel where a Hasbro executive explained that they're not looking for games. They're not looking for like board games, dice rolling games. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for experiences. They're looking for the next, Pie Face is an experience. It's not a game. So I think that's a big portion of where you need to focus what you're doing on the right target for sure. Corey says, I got original Mousetrap in the giant box at a flea market for $3, less than a Happy Meal. Yeah, that's killer. I should go. I never get those finds. I have a lot of friends who find things at places like that. I'm never the person who gets those finds for sure. Rob says, Cards Against Humanity ripoffs, very common. I see those a lot. They're sent to us a lot, which, again, we're a family company, and it'll be very offensive and sent to my inbox. And I just I assume it's somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. But yeah, I do get those sent to me pretty regularly. Damien says, like, Record. Record was my own design. I thank you very much. But yes, that's what we're looking for. We're looking things with packed full of theme, with the theme baked into the mechanisms that you're using to build the game. I'd like to think that's what Record does. When it ships, you can tell me. Corey said, should designers be asking via email if there's no list on the publisher page? Yeah, if you have an email, send an email. That's never going to be generally, unless you're very, very standoffish, or you have some sort of, you want to be polite, you want to thank them for their time. But yeah, absolutely send an email. That's a short thing to do. Absolutely. So Corey says, I'd love to have an available list for what themes, mechanics, weights, and that. So one thing about that, Corey, is as awesome as that would be, trends change like that. So, I mean, trends are always just moving from one thing to the next. It's a very, very common thing to say, like, oh, well, right now we're looking for this, but then 2 months from now we might be looking for something totally different. Being a small publisher like us, we don't have time to update a sort of list of what we're looking for, and sometimes we don't necessarily know exactly what we're looking for. We know what we're not looking for. That's definitely what's going on too. So Daniel says we're pushing our envelope. Cahoots, there's released in about a week. We signed about 2 years ago. I have a lot of games under contract, not like our previous games, and what I'm looking for now will be published 2 to 3 years from now. That's another good point. Just Daniel mentioned, a lot of games take a year to 2 to get done, and then you got to market the thing and you got to sell the thing. It takes time to make a game. Video games sometimes take a little bit, shorter time if you have a huge studio pumping them out. But again, games on our side have to go in a container and ship across an ocean, end up at a port. They have to go through 2 sets of customs. Then they have to get sent to a fulfillment outlet or multiple fulfillment outlets to get out to multiple customers at their own homes versus digital distribution going, boop, the game's available now. So I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, if a game sells 1 million units in the board game world, that's unbelievable. If a game sells 60,000 units, that's great in the board game world. And if the game sells 20,000 units, that's all right. If the game sells 5,000 units, that's okay. We're not, unless you sell 1,000 units and never anything else, a game's not really a flop in the board game world. Whereas if you sold 10,000 units in the video game world and that was it on like a AAA title, you failed hardcore. So our numbers are very different. People should definitely be willing to understand why it takes so much longer for a game to catch fire and then to be printed and published in the board game world. That's just, unfortunately, that's one of the holdups of us having to print overseas. So Corey, Zach says a good thing. Corey, just look at their catalog. I agree. You always want to just look at a publisher's catalog. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. My coffee's running out. So Corey says that makes sense. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, according to Daniel. I agree. We will get a lot of stuff done, and then we wait on the next step for all of the different people involved to move forward. So you guys have a fantastic week, and gals and everyone involved, anyone watching, I appreciate you being here. Anyone who's watching this later, I appreciate you watching this in the aftermath. So y'all, thank you so much for today's discussion. I had a really, really, really good time. I really encourage you, if you are a designer, send questions to publishers. I think that's pretty awesome. Like, that's a pretty good idea. I don't see any harm in it at all. Don't pester them, don't spam them, but send them something saying, hey, what are you looking for? I'm really starting to work on some new designs this year, and I'd like to maybe find something that fits your catalog. I think that's a great thing to do, and I would appreciate that email, and I'd probably have a pretty positive outlook on that person for doing so and sort of finding out what our needs might be. So yeah, it's a very, very good idea. Again, remember that those trends and needs sometimes change, but y'all have a fantastic week. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for dropping by. Bye-bye.